All right, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little pissed. I'm a little pissed right now. When I'm pissed, you better watch out because I'll drop some bars. Bro, I I got ready. I prepared my camera and I got all of my gear, got my little notebook, and I went to the park. I'm live within walking distance from this really cool park. And I was gonna do this last bit of the vlog outside because I really want to challenge myself to start creating in unique environments outside of just my loft. I kind of want to just put myself out there. And I think I'm going to location scout in one of my videos upcoming this week and just kind of like show you guys what that looks like. But all that to say, I was pissed because I got out there, set up all my stuff, and it was hot. It was like 82 degrees, muggy, so I'm already like kind of sweating. So whenever I sweat, dude, when I sweat in environments I'm not supposed to sweat in, I don't know why it pisses me off. Like it's like a dripping water faucet. So I was already kind of on edge, and then it started raining. And so I had to come back, and now it's not raining. So now I'm like, I was pissed. So I was slightly pissed, and then I got pissed, and then now I'm doubly pissed because I could have just waited it out. But now we're here, and the lighting looks kind of good. Anyway, all that to say, this might be part of the vlog. Well, it will be part of the vlog. It will be the outro to the vlog. But I honestly have a lot to say, so this might be its own piece. So if you're watching this on a separate video, this was the outro to one of my vlogs. But I'm probably going to chop it up and make it shorter and more of an outro. Some of y'all just need to go do shit. Some of y'all just need to go do shit. I don't really know how else to say it. I'm going to Thailand at the end of the summer. In August, I will be in Thailand probably for the whole month. I got invited to a fitness retreat called Thybrid. It's in Thailand. It's basically this haven for business owners and entrepreneurs to go train, lift, eat, sleep, rest, and reset, basically. And they reached out to me on Instagram, and they said they were inspired by what I was building, and they offered for me to come out. And this is the first opportunity that I've been given to come out as a creator and not a filmmaker, right? I'm not going out to film for them. I'm going out to film as me. That's the difference. The easiest yes I've ever said. The easiest yes I've ever given. And, you know, I say that because, right, they offered to cover everything when I'm there, like the lodging, the stay, everything's covered. But I had to pay for the flight, right? Old me would have said no. Old me would have said, need to be a little conservative, $2,000 for a flight. Ooh, it's kind of steep. We say yes to things now. We say yes to things now. And that is not something that old me would ever have really considered, because I would have just said, too much of a risk. What am I going to get out of it? The business opportunities, the networking, I look at things as investments now. And I talked about this in one of my old videos, right? I look at everything as an investment. I look at everything as an opportunity to grow my business in some way, shape, or form, even if it's not directly monetary beneficial, right? I view it as indirectly beneficial in some way, shape, or form because of the way that relationships have impacted my life and my business in ways that I never could have imagined, right? Relationships that I made years prior, finally coming back around, right? And I had not burned any bridges, and I had nurtured those relationships, and I had, fostered those relationships and grew them to some extent. But relationships I never thought would come around to fruition, you cannot put a price tag on that. And so now I'm at the point where I just say yes to things. And I do want to give some background, right? In my old job, I traveled the world. I had the distinct opportunity to, because of the nature of what I did, right? I documented CrossFit athletes trying to go to the CrossFit Games, and I was the young single filmmaker on the team, right? Everyone either was married or had a family with kids. And so I was kind of the wild card. So they sent me to everything. Because of that, I got to go to Brazil 4 times. I've been to Rio 3 times. Love Rio. Bro, the Brazilians are my people. If anyone's watching this that's from Brazil, I am dying to go back. Brazil, Dubai, Italy, Germany, Spain, Argentina, Nicaragua, all Canada multiple times. I've been to every single continent. I've been to every single continent except for Asia, which is why I'm going to Thailand. But what that experience taught me is, and it's truly a blessing, right? I do not forsake any of those opportunities, and I constantly always express my gratitude for the opportunities that I was given in my previous job. But those opportunities taught me, coming from the South, coming from a family that was, pretty traditional. We didn't travel. We didn't take many risks, right? We went to Disney World. I think that was we went to Disney World, and I think 1 year we went to Montana. That was those were the two biggest trips that I can remember in my lifetime. We did not take risks as a family. And that's no shot against my family. It's just the world that I lived in. Experiencing, traveling the world, and just being free, right? When you travel, you can't manhandle. If you've ever traveled a lot, you cannot manhandle life when you travel. You pretty much have to be free flowing, especially if you travel outside of the country, right? In America, if you stay in the States, you kind of know where the gas stations are. You kind of know where the Walmarts, the Publix, the Target, you know where things are. But when you travel to a different country, you cannot have your grip on things. You kind of have to be free flowing because it's a different culture. It's a different language most of the times. They have different ways of doing things. Like in Italy, they don't eat until like 10 or 11 sometimes, right? You have to learn to go with the flow. And what that taught me was that, first of all, life is just not that deep, bro. Life is just not that deep, but it taught me to embrace saying yes to things. And it taught me that experiences, you cannot put a price tag on experiences. And I know that's a very young and naive thing to say, but when I think about how my life is structured now, I say yes to things. And that the 3 years of traveling the world with my previous job, it lit a fire into me to prioritize those over just living a boring life. And I am under no pretense that this is a common experience. Most of my friends graduated school, they got their job, and they have been there ever since. No knock to them, but I graduated and immediately was able to travel the world. And in essence, do exactly what I wanted to do, right? The job wasn't end game what I wanted to do, but it provided me with things that I wanted to do. It allowed me to travel in the name of fitness, in the name of filmmaking. When you experience those things, when you get a little taste of traveling, you begin to realize that life is not that deep and you just have to start saying yes to things. So when this opportunity came around, it was an easy yes. It was an easy yes because I knew that A, these are memories that I will cherish for a lifetime, but also B, you never know what these connections, what these friendships can blossom into. And that's kind of the beauty of what we do as creators. If you're watching this and you're a creator, you know the beauty of what we do is that you really don't know what tomorrow looks like. You don't know what the future looks like, and that's the beauty of it. And to me, that's exhilarating. To some people, that's scary, and don't get me wrong, there is a scary side of not knowing what tomorrow looks like, but it's almost freeing because then you can make decisions essentially knowing that you have no way of knowing. You have no way of knowing what's next. So you can make decisions based off of the unknown. And that leads me into my next point, and that is making decisions, okay? I do have this outline, and I'm going to change the exposure a little bit because it's a little dark, so to speak. Yeah, there we go. Making decisions, bro. People cannot make decisions. People cannot make hard decisions, and I see it especially now that I'm back in Birmingham. Everyone is paralyzed to make hard decisions, and everyone makes decisions every single day. Every single day you make certain decisions in your life, but there are varying degrees of decisions in life, right? There's the easy decisions. Where are we going to eat tonight? Where are we going to, am I going to take the long route to work or am I going to take the short route? You make decisions in everything, but the hard decisions, those are the decisions that people avoid. And I think my belief is that most people want their decisions made for them. Whether they realize it or not, most people cannot make their own decisions, and so they want their decisions to be laid out for them. I grew up in the church, okay? I grew up in a predominantly Christian setting. I went to a predominantly Baptist university, and I was inundated with this idea. My parents didn't believe this, but a lot of people believed that the Lord would speak to them, that they would receive signs, that they would receive some way of knowing what decision they should make in life. And I do believe the Lord speaks to you, not physically, right? In the Old Testament, we see the Lord physically speaking to people. I don't believe in the New Testament that's a thing. I don't believe that happens. Do I think it can? Who are we to say what the Lord can't do? But I don't think it happens really at all. Totally different conversation. However, there are some people that believe the Lord will either speak to you or give you signs to make certain decisions in life. And while I 100% think he can, some people will not make decisions. They hold off making decisions until they receive a sign. I don't believe that's the right way to make decisions. I don't. And whether you're a Christian or not, whether you're a believer or not, most people feel like they need to be led a certain way before they make a decision, whether it's the world telling them, whether it's fate, whether it's things falling into place. People think that they need to be indicated or directed to the right or to the left, whether what decision they make. My dad gave me a book going into my sophomore year of college. I've talked about this before. It's called Just Do Something, and by Kevin DeYoung. And I was entering sophomore year, and I didn't know whether or not I wanted to be in the major that I was majoring in. I was an exercise science major, and I didn't know. That's when I first started feeling a little bit of doubt. I just didn't like the things that I was doing. I was starting to intern with some physical therapists, and I was like, bruh, I do not see myself doing this. Sophomore in college, by the way. And I talk about this too. It took a while for me to make certain decisions in my life. I felt this inkling in sophomore year of college, and I didn't end up making the decision to switch my career path until my senior year. But the more you grow, the more you mature, the more you're able to come to those decisions faster when you feel that feeling. Anyway, that's for another video. But my dad gave me this book, and he said, this will help you discern what it is you're to do in life. And he was like, I want you to read this. It's like 120 pages, max. And I said, yes, sir. And I put it in my nightstand, and I never read it. Throughout the entirety of college, I never read that book. And that nightstand came with me after I graduated college, after I had switched my major to something creative. Thought I had made that decision on my own. I said, I figured out what I wanted to do. Now I'm going to go do it. That book came with me to Cookeville, Tennessee, to my job. Fast forward 3 years later, okay, almost 6 years later, I'm boarding a flight to Brazil. This is 3 years into my job. At the same time, I was going through probably the most toxic relationship I've ever been in. There are several defining moments in my life. There are several key defining elements of my life that I'll never stop talking about. And I think some people think that they're beating a dead horse by talking about certain things. But there are 3 things that really defined my life that I speak of a lot. My last relationship, quitting my job, and then pivoting from filmmaking to content creation and mentoring and coaching. Those are 3 things, at least right now, that have really defined my life and have changed who I am as a person and the way that I operate. And those are things that I won't probably stop talking about, at least for right now, because they were such defining moments and they taught me so much about myself. Now, obviously, not naming names, not going to go into like nitty-gritty details, but that relationship was one of those relationships that really defined how I perceive relationships going forward. But more than anything, it really taught me about myself, how I operate when someone else is in the picture. So at that time, I was exiting the most toxic relationship of my life ever. We had broken up, I think, 4 times total. Super toxic. And when you are dealing with heartbreak, if you've dealt with heartbreak before, you know how debilitating it is. And no drama, not even trying to be dramatic. It is a physical pain in your chest, right? Like it is a physical pain, and the anxiety and the stress and the restlessness on your soul is something that I would not wish on my worst enemy. So going through that, at the same time, I am wrestling with what's next, right? I was like, my relationship is falling apart. I'm boarding this flight to Brazil. I don't even know if I want to do this anymore. The relationship that I thought was endgame is falling apart. What is next? I don't even want to be here. I don't even want to continue doing this job. And I remember, for some reason, something told me to throw that little book in my backpack. Something told me, hey, just grab that book. You might want to read it. And I put it in my backpack. So I'm boarding this flight to Brazil. I went to Brazil every year. I've been to Brazil many times. And I'm going down to film a documentary, which was one of my last projects with my job. And I'm by myself, right, flying. I flew there by myself many times. And I pull out the book, Just Do Something. And I read the entire book on my flight to Brazil. That book changed my life. And that book, the premise of the book is basically how to discern God's will for your life. Whether you're a believer or not, this applies to you, okay? And I'm not here to preach at you, right? I'm a Christian. I'm a believer. So I believe in the Lord. I believe in God's will. But if you're not, the principle applies. So many people think that they have to be led to make decisions. So many think that, especially Christians, think that God is going to speak to them, maybe not audibly, but in signs. God is going to direct them. Oh, I'm just waiting for God's will for my life. I'm just waiting for God to lead me. These are the same people that can never make decisions. These are the same people that stay in the same spot year after year after year after year and never make any hard decision. They'll make the decision on where to go to eat that night. They'll make the decision on whether or not to take the scenic route to work, but they won't make the decision on whether or not they should advance their career. They won't make the decision on things that they should do with their family. This book rewired my brain and showed me that the best way to make a decision is to simply make the decision. If you have faith, if you're a believer, and beyond that, if you even have faith in yourself, right? That was a huge aspect, right? I have faith that the Lord will provide. I have faith that the Lord will show me the right way, but I have faith in myself. I have mad faith and trust that I am more than capable of doing the things that I want to do in life. I have so much belief and relentless belief in self that I know, combined with my faith in the Lord, but also faith in myself, brother, we are unstoppable. And so that empowers me to make decisions. And so the premise of this book is the best way to make a decision, the best way to discern what it is for your life, what's best for your life, what God's will is for your life, is to just do something, is to just make a decision, one way or the other. God will show you whether or not that's the right decision. Or if you're not a Christian, your life will show you whether or not that's the right decision. Fate will show you whether or not that's the right decision, because your life will either go in an upward trajectory or it will crumble, and you will know whether or not that is the right decision. I went to Brazil. I worked the entire week and a half. I came back and I put my notice in for my job. That book is the book that helped me make the final push. That book is the book that made me realize nothing works until I do. Nothing makes the jump until I do. And I'll tell you right now why you can't make decisions in your life. And it's because you don't believe in yourself. And you might say, oh, Bennett, here we go, another rah-rah, just another hype speech about believing in yourself. You know the funny thing, the people that scoff at the idea of believing in yourself, the people who make fun of that are the same people that lead the lives I wouldn't even want to sniff, are the same people that lead lives that are so boring, that are so without any sort of charge, any sort of vigor. These are the same people that lead lives that I wouldn't want in a lifetime. These are the same people that lead lives that I can't even imagine having. These are the people that make fun of this concept of believing in yourself. And the irony is, you talk to anyone successful, you talk to anyone who has done anything worthy of note in life, ask them if they believed in themselves. Ask them if they had trust that they were going to do the right things, that they were going to do the things necessary. I guarantee you, all of them say yes. All of them say yes. You have to believe, and you have to have delusional belief in yourself if you ever want to make decisions in life. When I quit my job, I took a $15,000 loan to buy camera equipment. Probably the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. When I quit my job, I had an A7 III. I had a couple lenses. That's a lie. I had one lens. I think I had an old Sigma 24-70. I had an A7 III, Sigma 24-70. No laptop. No, I had a laptop from 2019. Look at me lying out here. I had a laptop from 2019. Sounded like a Boeing 747 was taking off every time I tried to play back any footage. I knew I was going to quit my job 3 months before I put my notice in, or I put my notice in, and 3 months before I quit my job, I took a $15,000 bank loan to buy camera equipment. Something in me, I knew I needed this equipment, right? But I wasn't making enough at my job to be able to buy all of that equipment outright. I grew up in a very pro Dave Ramsey household, right? You buy everything in cash. You know, you live like no one else so you can live like no one else. Well, I was about to live like no one else, for real. And I needed camera equipment. I needed a way to continue doing what I was doing. So I took out a $15,000 loan. I think it was a 19% interest rate over, I can't even remember, like 72 months or something crazy. Bro, I was on paper, that was the dumbest thing I could have done. But I remember being so confident, I didn't even think twice. Because I knew I was going to win. I knew I was going to win. I knew I was going to be able to pay that off in no time. I had no jobs lined up. I had nothing lined up. Before I quit, I think I had paid off $3,000. So I exited a stable paying job into the world with no certainty, $11,000 in debt, and with a car payment. And I had no idea what was next. I paid the loan off in 3 months. In 3 months, I paid the entirety of the loan off. Looking back on that, that was probably one of the biggest risks I've taken, but it was also one of the first times that I have truly, wholly believed in myself. It was one of the first times that I truly thought to myself, yeah, we're going to make it work, right? We're leaving no option. And it was also one of the first times that I backed myself into a corner, giving myself no option but to succeed. And I'm a huge advocate of that. You want to succeed? Back yourself into a corner. You want to succeed at something? Give yourself zero option but to succeed. And sometimes that means putting yourself in a situation that is unfavorable, right? I'm not telling you to go take a $15,000 loan. I'm not telling you to go do that. But that, to me, lit a fire under my ass where I had no option but to get up, grind, and do the things. And the cool thing about that is through that, not only did it teach me proper work ethic, but it also furthered my business, right? The jobs that I got to pay off that loan, the people that I met turned into business opportunities down the line, right? So that's goes back to this idea of nurturing relationships. You never know where your next opportunity is going to come from. Another story. When I quit, I had a freelance client, Tier Sport. You might have heard of them. And one of their athletes, for probably close to a year, they would contract me to go film documentaries on all of their athletes. I traveled the country I even went to Canada for one of their athletes. But I would document their athletes and tell these athlete stories. And one of their athletes was an Olympic lifter, an Olympian level Olympic lifter. Hampton Morris is his name. And he's like an actual Olympic medalist. I think he's won bronze and silver. Don't quote me on that. And I'm not going to quote his records because I will butcher them. This kid is an absolute savage in the weight room. And so he lives in the middle of nowhere, Georgia. And I went out to shoot a full day with him, showed up at his house in the morning, right? One random morning. It's this crazy training environment. His dad is his coach, right? He trains in his garage. His dad is his coach. It's just him and his dad, and he's just silently training. Bro lifts like 3 times his body weight routinely. And if you know anything about Olympic lifting, right? The Olympic lifts are comprised of the snatch and the clean and jerk, okay? And forgive me if I don't get the right technical definition, but the clean and jerk is taking the bar from the floor to an overhead position in 2 movements, right? So it's clean, jerk, okay? So you can most of the time lift heavier in the clean and jerk. A snatch is lifting the bar from ground to overhead in one smooth motion. I'm probably butchering these definitions, but the snatch is the one where you're snatching, right? Like that. So in those Olympic lifts, it's not like bodybuilding, right? When you go do a bicep curl, when you go do, a strict press, like your reps are slow, they're controlled, you are exerting a lot of effort, but there's no power output. It's just slow, controlled. You're maximizing time under tension. It's getting a little dark. There you go. You are maximizing time under tension. With the Olympic lifts, there are 2 main elements to these lifts, okay? There is a massive amount of power required for these lifts, okay? Most of the time people they're squats and I'm trying to think what the ratio is from squat to clean, but like it's something that if you watch like elite level lifters, sometimes their pull is so slow off the ground, but they're so powerful that they can triple extend and whip under that bar and catch it and stand it up. The amount of power is insane. So there's an immense amount of power, but then there is an immense amount of technique, okay? Ironically, the thought and the intention that goes into the training takes an infinite amount of time. I mean, these people are training it's the Olympics, so age 8, 9, maybe even younger. But when you actually step on the platform, the amount of time it takes from walking up to the platform, completing the lift, is around 6 seconds. When you're in the actual lift, there is 0 time for decision making. There is 0 time for doubting. I'll never forget the first time I did a split jerk right from the rack, right? I'm split jerking, and I would first of all, I was too timid to dip, but then to actually punch the bar in the air. It's not a strict press, right? You're not using your muscles to press. You are, and you're here. It's like power. And it's like you are using force to get the bar from point A to B, and then you're catching in the receiving position. It's not like a normal lift. And I'll never forget the first time I did that. I had to learn that it is a split decision, right? You are either in it or you are out. And if you even think for a second that you're not going to be fully in it, you're going to miss the lift. And I'll never forget asking Hampton, an Olympian level Olympic lifter, and asking him like, I interviewed him and I sat him down and I asked him, what is your mindset right as you're walking up to the platform? Because when you're competing, you only have 3 attempts. And right, some of these athletes it's called bottoming out or bombing out, where they will miss all 3 lifts, right? It's such a high pressure environment. There's people watching, you get 3 attempts. That's it. It's such a technical lift. Most of the time they're trying to PR. And I asked him, I was like, what's your mindset when you walk up to that platform and you're looking at a weight that you have never lifted before sometimes? And he said, every time I walk up to that bar, I tell myself, yes, you can. Yes, you can. And I remember in that moment thinking like, that's just a simple little mnemonic device. And honestly, it's kind of silly, but really it's not. Really, it's not. Here's an Olympian level athlete telling himself on the daily, yes, you can. Yes, you can. He has zero room for doubt. Zero room for doubt, because when he is lifting 400 plus pounds, right? The second that he has even a smidge of doubt, he fails. A smidge of maybe I can't, it's gone. And people say, well, he's an athlete. You can't apply that to life. Why can't you? Why can't you? Why can't we have the same level of belief that he does? Why can't you look at your business and say, yes, I can? Why can't you look at your dreams and say, yes, I can? Why can't you look at your creative endeavors and say, yes, I can? There is no reason you can't. And it's that verbal affirmation on the daily, without fail. I can't even imagine how many times he's told himself that. I can't even imagine how many times Hampton has walked up to that bar and said, yes, you can. Yes, you can. We need to start affirming ourselves in the same way. We need to start telling ourselves we can and we will. Anyway, that was a really impactful moment for me listening to that. I was like, it's just so simple. It's so simple that all he says to himself every time he goes up, bro has broken multiple world records. And it's just like, yes, I can. Yeah, I can. Zero room for doubt. It's crazy. Anyway, all that to say, I'm going to Thailand, and I just know that it's going to be beneficial to me in some way, shape, or form. And so because of that, I just say yes to things. I just say yes without question. I just am in this entrepreneurial, pursuit that I'm in, I'm not going to say that I'm reckless, but I am so much more of a risk taker than I used to be. And knowing that it's funny, as you mature and as you grow and as you start to take more risks, you start to realize that you're capable of much more than you actually thought you were, right? I'll never forget, like the first couple risks that you take, it's this immense weight. It's this immense, and don't get me wrong, there's always thought going into risks. There's always thought going into big decisions that I make. And obviously some are more weighty than others. But after you take a couple risks, it doesn't get easier. You just get more comfortable doing it because you're going to figure it out. You're kind of built for it, right? I know, and there have been multiple times that I've looked at my bank account and I've thought, damn, I don't even think I could buy groceries with the amount of money that's in my account right now. And then the next week it's, 10, 20, 30K, right? Like that's just the way entrepreneurism is, right? Like there are days that I know I'm going to have to make significant investments back into the business, right? And that's just it. That's just what's got to be done, because at this point I realize if I don't take a risk, right? If I stay like I was before I got my job and traveled the world, I don't get to experience anything. I don't get to build anything. I don't get to have anything that I can call my own, right? And that's the thing, is like, I want to make that distinction. There's no right or wrong answer, right? Some people they're not risk takers, and that's okay. But you can't expect extraordinary things if you don't put in extraordinary efforts. If you're not willing to take risks, you're going to have a normal life, and that's okay. But I don't want to have a normal life. Anyway, that's it. You can't make decisions because you don't believe in yourself. I think that's the summation of this little fireside chat, and it's quite cloudy outside, and it's gotten rather dark, so I might have to make some exposure changes. Anyway, I kind of went on a little bit of a rant, and this probably will be its own YouTube video, and this might go in the vlog. Probably will. At least it'll be cut off or cut up a little bit. I hope that spoke to someone, and I hope that was in some way, shape, or form helpful. Love you guys. See you in the next one.